Welcome to another episode of Listen Me Success Stories. We're so happy you joined us here. We're asking you if you can go ahead and share, like, subscribe, share, just get this channel out there, so we could just build this up. We really think we got a good thing going here, and we can help inspire people and help people on their journeys, or people are just getting started. Uh, so tonight, uh, I'm Scott King. Tonight, my co-host and the person I'll be running the chat will be Robyn Dobbins. And take it away, Robyn.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you today. We know what it's like to be helpless and hopeless, and you can rewrite your story at any time. We provide a platform to share the stories of people and how they have reclaimed their lives using dietary intervention.
As a reminder, neither of us or our guests are medical professionals. We're not offering medical advice. So please consult with your doctor or your medical team before attempting any new diet, way of eating, or interventions. Uh, Again, we're just here to just share our journey and stories of what have worked for us, and allow you the opportunity to ask us or our guest uh, what they have done to achieve success in their journeys as well. And speaking of guests, we tonight have an awesome, awesome guest. This guy is blowing up all over X or Twitter. I'm going to still call it Twitter. Uh, Phenomenal guy, such an inspiration. Tonight we have DaveEDanna. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
We're excited about this. There's It was hard before the show started for me not to ask a ton of questions, and then we would just come up to the show and just be dead air. So I'm refraining. So I'm gonna do my best to just kind of highlight your journey. We're gonna get your story, your background, and then we're gonna get into some questions a little bit later here from the people watching on YouTube. So uh, let's just go back early. Go back to childhood and everything like that. Uh, Growing up, were you a bigger guy, larger kid? Did you struggle with weight issues when you were younger?
I did not, or the weight issues I struggled with, I should say, were substantially smaller than what I ended up having to tackle in the last 2 years. Growing up, um, I was eating pretty much home cooked meals. I was running around outside, had a pretty normal middle class American childhood up in New England. And I remember graduating high school, I think I was in the 180s or 190s, and I didn't really think that I needed to lose weight or even wanted to lose weight. I think if you would look at the BMI, maybe it would say that I needed to lose 10 pounds, 15 pounds, just given my height, but nothing even dramatic enough that a doctor had mentioned it or anyone had mentioned it. And I certainly looked good, in my opinion, and it felt good. And then when I graduated college, I think I was in the low 200s. And I remember at that point being like, I could lose 40 pounds. Like, again, not, it wasn't a bad weight. I still thought I was feeling pretty good and looking pretty good. But I did notice that, I had moved up the belt a notch or two in the 4 years of college. That freshman 15 for me was maybe the freshman 40. And it never came off, that's for sure. But even that would then pale in comparison to the, 200 plus pounds I would gain over the next 7 or 8 years, to the point where I would need to lose 50% of my body weight, my peak body weight, if not more. So really, my weight gain was either minimal or perhaps was hidden by the fact that I was mostly eating home cooked meals, or I was getting a lot of exercise, just being a normal kid, up until really I didn't even notice anything until college. And it really didn't become dramatic or a problem until post college. And then that, even the first 2 or 3 years after college was pretty dramatic weight gain. And then it just continued on. And the 2 or 3 years everyone was remote during COVID or whatnot certainly didn't help.
Right, absolutely. So it sounds like you were kind of mindful of it, but it wasn't an issue.
Not an issue. Definitely not a medical issue. Definitely didn't come up with doctors, or no one externally told me I needed to lose weight or I should lose weight. By the end of college, I just was like, I could get back to my high school weight, and and that is not what happened.
Right. Yeah. So you say COVID? Are you saying like there was a big weight gain at that time, or that's where you started noticing, or what took place? Was it the fact you were being home, or what caused this to start spiraling?
Well, so graduating college, I got what I thought at the time was my dream job at one of the big four public accounting firms, which is what I wanted as an accountant. And I was living in the big city. For me, that was Baltimore. I had grown up in a small town, so living on my own, living in the big city, working at the big firm, that was supposed to be the dream. But instead, I was putting in crazy hours. It was very stressful, right? I was trying to live without having roommates, and I was trying to pay off my student loans. And I think it was a combination of probably being a workaholic and stress. And I completely stopped exercising because I didn't think I had time. And frankly, I didn't think I really needed to because I had never really gained enough weight for it to be that much of an issue. On top of the fact that while I wasn't making a lot of money, I was making enough money that back in 2014, 2015, they still had the dollar menus. Fast food every day was within my budget, right? Fast food twice a day was within my budget. And I didn't know how to cook. I didn't think I had time to cook. I didn't particularly want to cook. So a combination of, stress and mental health and working a lot with all of a sudden having like a pretty substantial fast food budget if I wanted to. And rapidly over the first 2 or 3 years, after college, I probably gained 50, 75 pounds, maybe even pushing 100. I wasn't weighing myself at the time, and I was very focused on my career. I was very focused on making sure I was paying my student loans. And, slowly over time, it just became apparent that this big four, massive, working for 100,000 person global firm in a million person city or metropolitan area wasn't really my thing. And so I think part of it was probably that environment as well. Now, when I moved out of that environment, I didn't immediately lose weight, unfortunately. It kept going in the same direction. But I would say that those years were my worst years in terms of my mental health and just having an unrecognized problem up until, and I would say maybe at this point I was around 300 pounds. I was very big, don't get me wrong. I had lots of weight already to lose. But at that point in time, I could still fit in chairs. I could still tie my shoes. There wasn't like things in life that I couldn't do. I mean, I couldn't run a marathon, right? But I had never run a marathon, right? So the things I needed to do as an accountant to keep going to work, the seatbelt still fit, right? I wasn't getting winded going upstairs. I was sort of very large, but not outside of the norms, given that I was now living in the South and there's a lot of overweight and obesity down here, especially. And then COVID is when I really think I went from, probably the high 200s or low 300s over that 2 or 3 year period to, where I got my peak. And, so that 2 years, just incredibly stressful on top of the fact that I stopped traveling, everything went remote. And again, there was so much turmoil. I wasn't spending money going out or traveling, but that money was then put into all this delivery and takeout because that was being safe, right? I was trying to do what I was supposed to do, and it just turned out that I was just sitting in my apartment and then sitting in my house and just ordering endless DoorDash, multiple times a day, right? It was the right thing to do. I was lucky that my job, I'm an accountant, could go remote, so it was a combination of being very stressed and feeling at the same time like I was very blessed. And not at that point, I would rationalize to myself, I don't even want to go to the gym, right? I don't want to get COVID, right? And so a whole bunch of factors going on. And so in that 2 or 3 years, I probably put on another close to 100 pounds, which then gets us, more or less to the middle of 2022, which is when my weight loss journey started.
Okay. It's so frustrating that bad food is just so cheap and so convenient. It's like the deck stacked against us already from the get-go. And also, like you kind of mentioned how you make excuses like no, not going to the gym. Me being a big guy before, I made excuses like, oh, I'm just saving money by eating these bad meals.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I'm just being responsible eating money or eating cheaply. So so you're at this point now. Was there a specific moment in your journey where you said, okay, I have to change, this is enough? What triggered you to change?
So it was, I think, May or June of 2022, and I had just moved in to this house, and this house has stairs, and the house I had been in during COVID for the last several years didn't have stairs. And I was unpacking all my stuff, and I realized I was getting winded going up the stairs, and that had never really happened before. And then right after that, I had my first business trip where I was flying since that would have been 2019 or since whenever COVID hit. And I needed to ask for a seatbelt extension. For the first time, I was big enough that the airplane seatbelt didn't fit. And that was basically the most embarrassing thing I had to do in public in my entire life. And because I didn't foresee that, because it never happened, I was already seated. And there were strangers next to me. It wasn't like I like covertly got. I don't know how you do it, but like I've never seen it done before. So I assume people who know they'll need it maybe get it from the stewardess initially, or maybe they bring their own. But I had no idea. I just realized, oh, it doesn't fit. Like I need to have a seatbelt on. So like I just have to ask for whatever solution they have, right? And so that was incredibly embarrassing. And I was thinking that the entire business trip, I couldn't even tell you what the business I was supposed to be doing on that trip was. And then I came back. And I was somewhat unpacked in this new house, but I found my scale in one of these boxes, and I decided to get on it because, again, I had been big for a long time, but never big where I couldn't fit in seats or I couldn't walk upstairs or tying my shoes was getting difficult. And so I got on the scale and it gave me an error message. And I thought, I've just moved. I used movers, this cheap thing from Amazon. It's broken. And so I ordered the same thing off Amazon, came the next day as everything does. And I got on that and it gave me an error message again. And I said, well, these two models, there's just no likelihood that these are both broken. But at the time, I couldn't figure it out. I was going to order a third one. And as I was going to bed that night, I realized, I wonder if scales have limits, which again, I'd never thought about. Every scale I'd owned before had at least gone to, I guess, 300 or at least to 290, whatever I had last seen myself at. And so I looked the next day and it had a max of 400 pounds. And I thought, this is not the scales problem. This is a me problem. And so that combination of just over maybe a 2 or 3 week period of not being able to get my weight because I was over my scales limit, which I hadn't known was a thing, a few days earlier, just wasn't something I ever thought about, with the fact that I was now going up and down stairs every day. And I was like genuinely getting winded going up and down the stairs. And the fact that I needed that seatbelt extension, I knew basically right then that I needed to make pretty drastic changes, pretty rapidly, because I was really concerned at that point. I had just turned 30, that I was now unhealthy and obese to the point where even in a society where a lot of people are unhealthy and overweight and obese, I was beyond all of that at a relatively young age, having just turned 30, with all these things I wanted to do in the rest of my life. And I could see them now slipping away, that I was finally unable to do normal things. So those few things coming together so succinctly and so rapidly, it was a real wake up call.
I sympathize with nearly everything you just said right there. It took me back to a lot of my past. So now you're in trouble. You need some help. What's your first steps you take? Do you jump into working out? Do you jump into a change of dieting? What's plan A for your journey? What do you do next?
So plan A really is that I don't know what to do, but I mostly know what not to do, right? So I know that not exercising at all isn't working. I have never been to a gym before. I've never been a member. I don't know how to lift weights, but I know I need to do some sort of exercising, some sort of movement, because doing nothing hasn't worked for me. And I don't really know what diet I want to follow, right? I tried dieting before. I'd done like a lot of salads, a lot of walking, and a lot of more salads. And I lost weight, don't get me wrong, but I was miserable for me, and I'd always fallen off the bandwagon and then gained the same amount of weight and more back. So I wasn't sure that going like super big onto vegetables and with walking was something that I could do sustainably, or at least I hadn't been able to in the past. And I knew that not exercising wasn't working for me. And I also knew that my diet, which was largely delivery and fast food, and I still don't really know how to cook, but I definitely didn't know how to cook then. So nothing homemade, everything packaged, everything frozen, everything processed. That certainly wasn't working. So the very first thing I did was I cut out the fast food, I cut out the junk food, and I cut out any liquid calories I had. And I tried to, at least if I was going to be eating out, or if I was going to be getting some delivery, or because again, I didn't really know how to cook at that point in time. I was focused more on meats, on vegetables, on fruits. I wasn't particularly low carb right at the beginning, although I do like to say that just cutting out fast food and junk food and liquid calories cut out a huge amount of sugar, cut out a huge amount of carbs. So I did pull back, also cut out a huge amount of calories, right? It cut back on everything, right? So I basically cut out a lot of the stuff I knew was bad for me. And I did get a gym membership within 2 or 3 days. The gym I go to now wasn't even open at the time. So it was this little gym across town that I found. And, I just walked in there not knowing how to do anything at over 400 pounds. And my diet wasn't really a diet model, I would say, at that point in time. I just cut out a lot of the stuff I knew was bad. And that was how I kicked it off probably for the first month or two. That was basically it.
Awesome. No, that makes complete sense. I mean, when you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah.
it makes complete sense. So at what point do you realize in this journey that things are starting to work? I mean, are you in limbo for a while? Does something finally click? Where do you notice it?
So the first 4 weeks were the hardest, and they were the hardest because it was very intimidating to walk into the gym. I was doing it early in the morning. At that point in time, I was working full time, and I was a full time grad student. So the only time I could work it in was way early in the morning because I had evening classes, and I didn't know how any of the machines worked. I didn't actually touch a machine until the next year. I didn't actually touch a free weight until like 2 months ago. But I was doing cardio. I was getting more movement than I had been before. I was trying out the various cardio machines. Although, to be honest, I stuck a lot with the treadmill early on because I wasn't sure I would fit on all the other machines. I didn't want any of them to, again, now I'm concerned everything has a weight limit, right? So I've never thought about it before, but now I don't know what has a 350, a 250 weight limit, right? But while I'm doing all this and while I'm cutting out all of those junk food and fast food and I'm not feeling particularly good, to be honest, because I want all that sugary stuff. And I had been drinking a ton of soda every day. So that had a bunch of sugar and that had a bunch of caffeine, right, that I wasn't replacing. And on top of that, I'm still getting the error message on the scale. And so I was most motivated during that first month, but also it was very hard because I wanted all the things I had given up, and the scale still wasn't showing me what I wanted, which was a number. And so on June 28th, and I have this as one of my starting pictures of 2022, which was 4 weeks later, I got what I now consider to be my starting weight, and that was 399.9, which again was the highest the scale could show after 4 weeks of getting that error message. And so that was the first time I felt like this is actually working. And that's a crazy high weight for most people, but to me, just getting a number on the scale, I don't know if I lost 5 pounds, I don't know if I lost 25 pounds, right? But I lost enough that the scale recognized that like I was a person who had a weight and not just something that was too heavy that needed to get off the scale, right? And on top of that, around that point in time, I had been going between like a 5X and a 6X shirt, depending on like the brand and depending on like, the fit and whatnot. I guess when you get up to that size, like it's sort of a mess of who's making what. But at that point in time, I was like comfortably in a 5X over that first month. I was concerned, like, I know this is crazy, but a lot of brands have up to 4 or 5X, but it seemed like at the time nobody went above 5X, which I never thought I would need, but I was on the edge of not fitting in 5Xs. And most brands that I could find at most stores, even like big and tall stores, didn't have above 5X, especially like pre-2022, 2021. And so now getting 399 on the scale and being comfortable in a 5X, it meant that I wasn't getting bigger, right? Because I was starting to think about having to transfer all my shirts over and buy all these really expensive shirts that were 6Xs. And now I'm like, hey, maybe at some point I'll be looking at a 4X, right? Like instead of a 6X. But at least these 5Xs fit me now, and I'm getting 399.9 on the scale. And so that was a real exhilarating moment for me, and it really validated the last 4 weeks of effort, because they were highly motivated but also highly miserable at the exact same time.
That makes sense, man. It's got to be so rewarding.
Yeah.
being on the journey also myself, it's funny how we could find rewards in something that it's not. I mean, like you look at just solely off of numbers, that's pretty bad, but we're making progress, and that's all that matters. And it's a huge accomplishment for us.
It was
So,
wild how happy I was to be like comfortable in a 5X,
right,
when like really in high school I was like a medium, right? And in college I was a large, and now I'm happy about a 5X, right? It was,
it's
it was crazy. It
it's
still
all
is,
about
to be honest.
perspective. Yeah,
That's exactly right. Yes.
that's awesome. So you're kind of just winging it right now. It seems like you're really not sure what you're doing, but you know something's working. Uh, And I've noticed, because I followed you for quite a while now on social media, you do a great job absorbing information, asking the good questions and everything like that. Uh, and so at what point, and also not just what point, but what did you do to start tightening up your way of eating or your workouts, or making it more of a routine or a planned scheduled thing?
Yeah. So after that first 4 weeks, I knew that something was working, and I could do this, right? Because I'd seen those first baby steps. But at the same time, I had basically just been winging it, right? I was big enough that just doing some sort of movement for like 20 or 30 minutes a day, and not eating fast food, and not binge eating every day, and not drinking 1,000 calories of Mountain Dew had worked. But that I knew that wasn't going to work forever, and I knew that most people who were successful in their weight loss had some sort of structure and diet and whatnot. So I started looking into it, and I really wasn't sure that I could do everything in moderation, because I considered myself somewhat of a food addict or a sugar addict, and I just wasn't sure I could do like a moderate amount of some of the junk food or fast food or desserts and not end up binging. And I also wasn't sure I could give up every type of food that I loved. So I was trying to find a diet model that would eliminate all those, a lot of the sweets and things that I've been addicted to. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't know if it's actual addiction, but that's what I call it, while maintaining something that I liked. And low carb stood out to me because you can eat a lot of meat, which I like, and which is very high in protein, while cutting out a lot of the, well, basically all of the packaged and processed food that I see, the fast food, the junk food. And so I started at that point to transition to low carb, or maybe low carb might not even be the right word. I was still eating a lot of vegetables as well. I think at the time I thought it was low carb, because compared to what I had been doing, it was. But I don't think I was in ketosis or anything like that. Not that I necessarily try to be, but it was a lot lower carb than I had been doing. And it was, in my mind, it was more of a structure. It was more organized than what I had done during that first 4 weeks. And I also decided at that point that, again, I was still only doing cardio, but that's when I formalized it. I wanted to do 10,000 steps a day as sort of a baseline, and I wanted to be in the gym 5 days a week. Like, I just wanted to work it in with sort of like my work and school schedule. Like, work and school was sort of a Monday through Friday thing, so the gym would go along with that. The gym would be beforehand, and I would, at that point I was just doing cardio. But at that point, I didn't really mind. I didn't want to push myself too quickly, too early on in the gym. And again, I was still 400 pounds. I wasn't sure what machines I would fit onto, let alone that I didn't know how to use any of them, right? So I wanted to be on the treadmill or some other cardio thing 5 days a week before work, and eating my version of the time at the time of low carb, which was a lot of meats and a lot of vegetables. But those vegetables at that point did still include like potatoes and things that, like, in hindsight, weren't really low carb. Like, they were more whole foods, more healthy, more natural, but certainly had a lot of natural carbs, a lot less sugar, and a lot less carbs than I had been eating. And so that, cut me off at any point. I know I'm rambling, but
You're good, man. You're good.
I had avoided going to the doctor for maybe 10 years at that point, maybe longer, to be honest. I think the last doctor I had was my like primary child care like doctor that I saw up until I went to college. When I was like 18 or 19, I think I still saw him like through college. They made, but like I was 30 at the time. I was probably, so that had been almost a decade. And so I had insurance, right? I was an accountant. I was ignoring it because I know it wouldn't have been good news, right? And one thing I got really good at over the time I gained 200 pounds was lying to myself, and just sort of belittling the issues I was having in my own mind. And I knew that if I got lab work or I saw someone with an MD, I would be much harder to convince myself everything was going okay, right? But I got a doctor, and I went to the doctor for the first time. That was probably like August or September, so like another like month or two into the journey. And I think I was like 380 or something at that point. And they did lab work, and the lab work came back, and it was still all bad. My resting heart rate was well above 100. My blood pressure was in class 1 or class 2 hypertension or whatever, high blood pressure, and my A1C and my blood glucose were in the pre-diabetic range. And I was even at 380, which, like I didn't want to brag, but I was ready to brag going in there. They were like, well, you're like a class 2 or class 3, like super morbidly obese. And I didn't feel like bragging anymore after they said that, right? That didn't sound good at all. And then the doctor, they had a lab on site. So the doctor got all those results like the day later, and I was looking through them on that app they send them to, and they're all flagged, right? They're all flagged. And I was like, oh, wow. So even though I'm not getting error on my scale anymore, and even though I feel like I've cleaned my diet up a ton, because I had been like low carb for a month or two at this point, and I had been exercising for a month or two at this point, and yet I was still in that pre-diabetic range, still had a heart rate, I think it was above 110. It was really high that first time. And my blood pressure was pretty bad too, not to mention all the other stuff that I don't even know what it meant at the time. But that was a real wake-up call to me again, that I had done a lot in my mind, but obviously the blood work, was showing that there was more I needed to do. And that is when I went back through my diet and really decided more of those carbs and sugars have to come out to get my, my glucose under 100 and my A1C, at least under 6 or whatever the 5, whatever the diabetic range is. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that it was probably going to be a little bit harder and need a little bit more structure to lose weight the right way, rather than just lose the weight but still have all the blood work be bad and still have all this these other issues going on. So up to that point, I had mostly been winging it, and then after that, I went more low carb, I guess I would say, and I increased the exercise a little bit. And that's mostly the diet model I've stuck to since then. I wouldn't say I'm certainly not like a carnivore, and I don't say keto because I do have more carbs than I think you can technically do. I don't like to get hung up in some of those technicalities, right? Mostly I eat meat, and mostly if I have a side dish, that's a vegetable. And then that's maybe 75% of my meals, and I try to make them all as home cooked as I can. And then the other 20 to 25%, I make the best choices I can in like social settings and whatnot. But that is where a lot of my carbs still come from, right? So this weekend when I'm in Georgia, like there will be some Southern food there, and there will be lots of meat dishes, right? But they'll have sauces that are probably not low carb, and their version of a vegetable side might be, have some oil I'd rather not have, or the vegetables mixed in with some, some carb, right? Every dish in the South has carbs in it, so it will be substantially lower carb than anyone else will be eating there, but it will be more carbs than I had like today when that wasn't happening. And that's mostly the model I've stuck with now for, I guess, 19 or 20 months.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Robyn, you got a question?
Just to go along with that, you have talked about possibly having a food addiction. Do you find that when you do have these social setting carbs that it triggers anything down the line?
It's definitely harder when I find myself snacking more, and when I find myself, I don't think I've had a binge eating episode in a long time, but when the nighttime snacking is worse and when the cravings are worse, are definitely on days when like I had to go to a birthday party, or I had to go to some event where there was food and I had like a small slice of birthday cake, and I know that it's going to put me like at the upper limit of whatever carbs and sugar I would like to have for that day. That definitely makes it a lot more difficult, which is one of the reasons I do think there's probably some level of addiction or binge eating in there, because it is substantially harder to do to stick to the diet model when I stray out of it. And that's another reason why I'm leery of the everything in moderation model for myself, just because I don't know. Like, I understand I could have a donut every day and it's only like 200 calories, and that would fit if I'm eating 2,200 calories from like a math standpoint. But from like a mental standpoint, I don't know if I could just have one donut, right? Like, it might become the whole box of donuts, and then it wouldn't fit anyone's model anymore. And so I try not to. It's a balancing act between needing to be able to go to social functions, to corporate functions, community functions, family functions, right? And be a normal member of society. And also, I just don't think what's worked for me is not eating most of these foods that everybody else is eating. So, that's why when I'm eating at home by myself, I think I am very low carb. It's just that I'm not doing that 25% of the time. And so that's where I think more of the carbs and sugar come in, why I'm probably not exactly in keto. I'm in a more like a low carb diet.
Yeah, and that's why we have this conversation, because Scott and I are both from the NSNG, No Sugars, No Grains community. So we know a lot of people who are doing just that, but we really want to recognize that there's a range that works for a lot of people. You're fairly new in your journey. You had a lot of weight to drop, and that's working. Maybe down the line you have to refine a little more, but now you've made all these connections with all these great people that you can ask questions. So do you define how you eat, or you just say you're low carb and that's where you are?
I generally say I'm low carb. I do have one of those blood meter tests that I think tells you if you're in ketosis, and usually I'm in what's called like light nutritional ketosis when I check it, and usually my blood glucose, it's never been over 100 since I started this. It's usually like in the 80s, and so. But that I've never tested it after a weekend when I'm not cooking, right? Like, even if I'm eating that, like, mostly like barbecue food, which you think is just meat, like all the different sauces and things they cook it in and whatnot. Like, it'd be interesting, I guess, to test it after that, even if I've still had mostly meat and haven't drunk any calories and I haven't had anything that I explicitly thought had sugar in it. I would guess that down here in the South, there is some stuff that would potentially push me out of that low ketosis. So in general, I call it low carb. On the days that I've tracked it, I think I'm between 40 and 60 grams of carbs a day. If it's a day that I'm here, it's closer to the 40. And then if it's a day that I'm have a meal that's out, it might be 60, a little bit higher. I'm not necessarily going for to be in keto or ketovore, but like, it really has worked well for me because I like eating meat so much, and because I don't mind eating like a number of different vegetables. It works well for me, the sort of model, if I'm having eggs for breakfast, having chicken and a vegetable side dish for lunch, and then normally having red meat and a vegetable side dish for dinner. And then if I get those nighttime cravings, if I need something sweet, going to like frozen blueberries or frozen something like that, as opposed to like an entire pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And so, like, would that be strict keto or carnivore? No. But would it be low carb, especially by my old standards? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're going about it the right way. You're finding what's going to work in your world. However, I would be very interested to know how those tests. I've actually never tested for ketone in the
Yeah.
6 years I've been doing this. So I just
Yeah.
assume, because I don't eat any carbs, but it
Yeah.
would be really interesting. I lived in South Carolina for 10 years. There's sugar in every single one of those sauces.
Yes.
I can guarantee it. And there's
Mhm.
probably sugar in the greens, and there's probably sugar in the baked
Yes.
beans, and so there's sugar in all of that. So don't hide that little tidbit of information from yourself, because that's probably a good piece of information.
I
do
went
have
out the other
a
day.
question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a couple of questions, but
Fire away.
and one of them I think you kind of answered. Are you tracking? But you can say whatever it was you were going to say too. Sorry,
No, I was just saying, I went last weekend. I went out and I got a steak, and the side dish I got steamed broccoli, which was fine, and I got collard greens, and I was having the collards, and I was like, this is not how this vegetable normal, like I don't know, like they don't tell you what it is. No, they said it was but like there's something, like maybe, I mean, sometimes they cook it in like bacon fat or with bacon, but that's fine. But I was like, this is not like, is it like there's some hickory here, there's some smoked honey, like something. I was like, I don't know what's here, but like I'm definitely getting several grams of sugar at, minimum in this side dish, even if I only have half of it. It tasted good, mind you, but it was not as clean as I thought it was going to be. It's always interesting now. I do think I pick up more on sweetness because I'm not used to everything being overly sweet. And so I don't even think I would have noticed it in the past, but I was like commenting, to my mother-in-law and my wife, and they were like, how do you know that? And I was like, I don't, like, these just taste like, there's a little sweet here. Not a big deal. I still had half of them, but half was enough. I knew there was something in there, and it was a big steak, so didn't need any more than that. But that's the type of thing where I'm, where I'm not cooking and where I'm out, where it's going to be okay. I'm not having 50 or 100 grams of sugar, right? But I would prefer there wasn't sugar in the collard greens, right? Or whatever they did add to it. Do I track? At the beginning, I didn't track anything. I was so big, I had so much weight to lose, and cranking up the exercise while cutting out a lot of that food was enough. Now the weight loss has slowed and I've lost like 140 pounds, I track now when I'm eating something new or when I have a question about something. So if I'm having roughly the same number of eggs every morning for breakfast, I don't particularly track that, right? I know generally what those are. I have tracked it before, right? And if I'm having, I tend to have chicken thighs or the chicken, what I call tenderloins, a certain number of those. I know roughly they weigh 2 ounces, that one weighs 3 ounces, and a side of broccoli. To be honest, like when it's something like a side of broccoli, if it's just broccoli and salt and pepper, not even worried at all, right? And then red meat's a little bit harder for me. I do tend to put those recipes in because there tend to be more spices and things added, especially as I'm learning to cook. And again, sometimes there are sneaky carbs and sneaky sugar. And just in general, one of the things I continue to struggle with is definitely portion size. And so that usually comes in with the red meat because I really like red meat. And when the way they sell you a steak, it's like I can easily like slap a 2-pound steak on here and then throw a bunch of other stuff on. It's like, would I really want to eat 3 pounds or for food for dinner? Like maybe not, right? So I don't want to say I track like every day, or I track to specific macros, or I track to specific calories. But when I'm having something new, especially more recently when the weight loss has slowed, and especially if it's related to red meat, which I very easily eat a ton of, I will put it into, I wear a Fitbit. That's how I track my steps. I'll just put it in and be like, all right, what is this? Like, if this is going to become a staple of my diet, like, let me just see what it is. Usually that's pretty low carb. It's more just like, did I accidentally, like I said, eat like 3 pounds of food? I was like, this is great, but like I shouldn't be eating that much. So it's becoming a little bit more important, especially as I continue to tighten and to continue to try to maintain the weight loss. I'm about to drop, hopefully, under 250. And I do think like that's like, it's much harder than it was at 350 or 390. And so a lot more of that is probably going to be needed. It's a little bit unfortunate. I don't particularly like doing it, which is why I don't do it daily. It's also why I tend to eat almost the same thing. I try to eat basically the same thing because I know what that is. I'm familiar with it. I'm an accountant. I like routine. So and it means that when I do that 20-25% when I'm at my mother-in-law's, when I'm at a community event, when I'm going back to, I went to Clemson and I live pretty close to Clemson, so they have alumni events. Those are not healthy at all, right? So when I'm at those events, that's sometimes if I get a menu ahead of time where I know what I'm having, I'll put that in to check. Like, I know it's going to be somewhat off my diet, but is it going to be okay if I do OMAD that day, or if the only other thing I've had that day is eggs and chicken, right? Like, then I'm okay if that's that's a little bit, I'll take that because I do want to make sure I get those professional connections and the other things that are important from whatever event I'm at, right? It's slowly becoming more important. And then I guess not to ramble, but the other thing I am slowly trying to become more aware of is just like the quality of the food as well. So tracking to see like this, I may not necessarily care that this has 1 or 2 grams of carbs in it, and if it's no sugar, but like, are they using something artificial? Does it look like there's a bunch of preservatives? So like that's something, again, at 400 pounds, even at 300 pounds, honestly, I didn't really care. It just wasn't the main focus. But as I get under 250 and as I really get towards my end goal weight, the goal would be to just sort of avoid as much of that as I can. And I would say that meat and vegetables are a lot better in terms of that stuff than most of the rest of the grocery store. But there's still some, substantially lower quality meat that that I have been eating. Right, it's affordable. It's at the super Walmart. That's mostly where I go. Like I don't have a massive budget, but if there's another store that I could go to for slightly more that had a better quality or better practices, that's something I guess I'm more aware of than I have been, just like I'm more aware now of tracking, some of the things.
Makes sense. That's Hey, so I wanted to kind of fast forward really quick in your journey because there is so much to Dave that I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing we're just not going to be able to hit on everything
Oh, yeah.
that's to you. So I wake up in the morning, I wake up pretty early, and when I get on the phone, I 100% for sure know the first thing I'm going to see is Dave in the gym. So it's awesome, and you're super inspiring. So obviously something happened to where you just you're just all in and you're committed. And so I'm gonna wrap up a whole lot of things into this question here.
Sure.
It seemed like it was a snowball effect since you started your journey. I mean, you are a machine in the gym. You're just out there, inspiring so many people. You get married, and you've done so much. You paid off debt. Um, so what causes all this? Is it a snowball thing, like we're a newfound confidence, or just you're now structuring your life, you're kind of getting it back in control? What's making this happen?
I think that what had happened in the past is when I had tried to diet or I had tried to lose weight in the past, I was very singularly focused. It was like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk until I've burned like 1,000 calories, and that's going to mean that I'm going to lose weight. And it would work. Like I would lose weight, but then I would stop. I would be miserable. I'd fall off the bandwagon, and I would gain it all back. And instead, what I tried to do this time was take a more comprehensive approach that actually started with like my mental health and my mindset, and incorporated things like I need to get my budget in order, I need to pay off this credit card debt, and I need to lose weight and start exercising. And I can't bottle it all up and just focus on this one thing, because then one of these other major issues out there in my life that's also needs a lot of work, like my mental health, like my financial health, is going to intrude. And since I haven't been working on it, I've been ignoring it, it's going to throw me off track again, and I'm just going to crash, which is sort of what had happened before. And additionally, I figured if I'm going to do this major weight loss, which, in theory, hopefully will be losing 50%, more than 50% of my peak weight, it would be a real shame to come out of that and still be in tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt, or still have mental health that hadn't come along with me, right? Or honestly, just be like into my 30s and be single and lonely. And so I felt like I need to do all of this at once, or it won't work. And at this weight where I can't fit in seats or walk upstairs, I don't know if I'm going to get another chance, especially having just turned 30. A lot of my friends were starting to get engaged, or at least being dating seriously. My career was at the point where it sort of like moves forward or doesn't, right? I'm past that sort of like introductory job you get out of college in accounting. And so, all of those things, again, sort of happening at once, was just a wake-up call across the board that I need to just implement strategies across the board. And I guess a theory of like a rising tide will raise all of the ships up, right? Like theoretically, if I'm getting my eating under control, then I won't be binge eating all the time. I won't be buying all this soda all the time. That might benefit my budget, but I don't really know because I'm not keeping a budget, right? Because I'm just putting everything on my Discover card. But if I start to keep a budget and also I'm working on eating clean and eating healthy and DoorDash isn't on my phone anymore, that's good. And waking up at 4 a.m. and being at the gym by 5 and being done with my exercise, I mean, I actually delay the gym pictures in the morning because no one sees them if I post them too early. People sometimes ask, like, my alarm's goes off at 4 and I post that one in real time, but then I don't post the first gym selfie until 6. And they're like, wow, were you exercising for 2 hours or do you drive like an hour to the gym? No, the gym is less than a mile away and I don't do even an hour every day. But if I post it at 4:51, no one sees it. So,
Right.
but that to me, that's a big boost to my mental health. Even if I'm going to have a stressful day for the rest of the day, even if I'm going to do a long shifts at work and then have classes in the evening, being able to walk out of the gym really at 5:15 or something is a really big boost to my positivity, and it's a really big boost to my self-confidence that I started the day off well. Because even a bad workout feels good when you're walking out. So, it's a really good way for me to work on my mental health, and the benefit of it is it forces me to go to sleep early. When we're done with this, I'm going right to bed, right? Like brush my teeth, go to bed because I have a 4 a.m. alarm set, and that's going to stop me from making a trip to the kitchen on my way to bed. And so a lot of times in the past when I was waking up at, again, during that remote time during COVID, I could wake up, I don't know, minutes before I was supposed to be working, theoretically. And that meant I could stay up late the night before. And, when I would drink the most Mountain Dew or have the most beers or binge eat the most leftovers that I had delivered was after 9 p.m., after 10 p.m., after 11 p.m. And to be honest, I can't really tell you the last time I saw 11 p.m., right? Like I'm and supposed to be in bed hours before that. So it both works from a mental health standpoint for me, getting that workout in early, knowing nothing can interrupt it, right? My boss can't email me because she is asleep for another 3 hours, right? So that my wife also asleep for another 3 hours, right? She's not getting up at 4 a.m. So that is the time when I can set the tone for the day. And at the same time, it forced me to go to bed early. Maybe I had a handful of frozen blueberries, but I don't really have time to binge eat a whole bunch of stuff because really I want to be in bed by 9:30, right? And there just isn't enough time, right? So it's worked in two different ways for me, a lot better than I thought it would, because when I first started this journey, I was in grad school, and so I really couldn't do workouts in the evening because I would have classes from 6 to 9 p.m. 3 nights a week, and I wouldn't get done with work in time to do it in between those two. And after 9 p.m., I certainly didn't want to spend another hour exercising, but that's over now, and that's been over for nearly a year now, and I haven't even thought about switching up to evenings. I also think it'll be probably more crowded in the evenings, but working out in the mornings, I don't know if I'll do it forever, but even if I think to the future, I think I'll probably be in an office 4 or 5 days a week just with my career going forward. Again, it would still make sense to do it in the mornings. So we'll see, but I do think it's worked out substantially better than I initially thought it would, because I initially thought it was completely crazy too. And it's also had a substantially better boost to my mental health than I thought it would, which is really important.
It makes sense. I mean, you found what works for you and you're killing it. So, Robyn, go for it.
Couldn't find my mouse to unmute.
Oh.
I have 1,000 more questions for you, Dave, but I'm gonna refrain from asking mine because there's one that's been sitting here. It's from Matt, who is in an airplane right now watching you.
Wow.
He's asking what keeps you motivated.
That's an interesting question. So I find that motivation isn't what keeps me motivated anymore, if that makes sense. Motivation is what got me through that first month that was terrible when I was still getting the error message on my scale. I still couldn't fit in an airplane seat. You know, I was having trouble walking up the stairs. It was incredible. I felt incredibly embarrassed that entire month, even the first 6 months, really, even walking into the gym at that size, especially because I didn't know what I was doing. But that was when I really needed the motivation early on. And largely at this point, it has been replaced by routine and by discipline and by habits, right? Like sometimes I post that most times actually, I'll post that 4 a.m. picture on the weekends when my alarm isn't set and the gym doesn't open till 6. So why am I up? Well, I will often go back to sleep after that, but the routine is there where I'm naturally up, between 4 or 5 pretty much every day. So motivation was really critical at the beginning, and certain things do motivate me, like when we start a new year, I make all my goals, I get remotivated. When I'm thinking about the future, right, getting married was very motivating to me. When I'm thinking about the next steps in my career, I'm thinking about what I want to do in real estate, I'm thinking about at the time becoming a husband and then a father, right? I'm thinking about making my parents proud. There are lots of like long-term things that do motivate me and that I want to, but really on a day-to-day basis now, it's routine and it's habit. This morning, I didn't sleep well last night. I posted about it, right? I try to be as honest as I can. I really didn't feel like going to the gym this morning. Certainly didn't lift particularly heavy or even lift that much this morning. But the routine and the habit got me there, and I felt good at the end doing it. But I don't want to make it seem like I was remotely motivated this morning. It was a slog to get to the gym this morning. That happens. Maybe it happens once a week, twice a week, not more than that. But there are just days when I'm just not motivated to go, and the routine and the discipline and the habit get me there, and the knowledge that afterwards I always think I'm glad I did that, right? Like, and so, it's an interesting question. People ask me all the time, and there are many things that motivate me, right? Looking at social media motivates me, right? My wife motivates me, family and friends, my own personal goals, wanting to make sure my blood work gets in the right place, like wanting to, be a father one day and be around for my kids, be able to run around with them, keep up with them and stuff of that nature. But also on some days, there's just nothing that motivates me. And on those days, you've got to rely on that habit and that routine.
What you said about motivation makes so much sense. I've never heard it put that way, but that's perfect, man. So about the motivation
Yeah,
question.
you turned into just a blinking S.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to read your text message, so that's what happened there. Robyn, since I can't watch or see what your text message is could you ask him really quick?
Sure. So I was trying to give Scott a beautiful question, but I'll take it.
Hey, I see.
And another one just came in. So I'm going to ask my question. And my question is, why did you start posting all of this stuff on the internet in the first place?
Yeah. Okay. So that is a very good question. I get that one all the time. So I had gotten very good over the past however many years at lying to myself, at pushing things down, at bottling things up. Not even necessarily lying, but ignoring things, right? Pretending they weren't as bad as they were. Especially in the COVID years, right? It was the end of the world, right? So surely it didn't matter what size pants I was wearing, and so what I wanted to do, and I actually started just posting on Instagram, was under my own name, start posting pictures of me in the gym, pictures on the scale, and pictures of what I was eating, so that in 1 month, in 3 months, in 6 months, I could look back at it and I could say, did this work? Right? Did this not work? Can I hold myself accountable? Can I see, right? If there was a whole month when I didn't post any pictures in the gym or any food pictures, and also I didn't lose any weight, like, was I hiding something from myself? Right? So that's really just why I wanted to do it. Why X and Twitter took off, I have no idea. I mainly posted those things on on Instagram, and I wanted to do them under my own name and for accountability. Again, this time and my weight loss, I wanted to take a radically different approach to what I had tried before, because I had attempted to lose weight many times, as most big guys have, and they had all failed. And that one, and being publicly accountable to myself under my own name with pictures, which is basically Instagram, right? That was the way I was going to do it.
Actually, I've been doing the same thing now. Maybe I got that from you. I don't know, but and I'm in this routine of posting these things online, and I'm like, I don't even know if people are watching, but now I kind of have to do it because that's my accountability post for the day. So
That's exactly
I
right.
totally
Yes.
understand. Yeah. We are like almost out of time, but we had one more question come in, and then
Sure.
I'm gonna disappear again. So Brad asks, and he says he's been following you for a few months, and he said in 2022 you struggled with loneliness. How did you overcome that, and what advice would you give?
I had to put myself out of my comfort zone. It's one of the harder things I had to do. It's one of the things, um, related to mental health that, you know, was so important and is so hard, especially I think for men to talk about. But I ended up going to local events, right? I'm Jewish. I hadn't set foot in a synagogue in 15 years, but I found a synagogue. I went to it a few times, way out of my comfort zone. And oftentimes I'd found myself turning down social, invitations because of my weight, because of my size. And so instead, I started initiating those with coworkers. I started not skipping company events, right? I was in school at the time and Clemson had events. I had been skipping all of them, so I started to go to them. There was a local bowling league that actually closed, but I started going to that every once in a while. And I, for the first time in years, got back on dating apps, which at least meant that I was going on dates, even if they didn't work out. Obviously, they did eventually, but so there were a few different things, and one of the other things is I talked to guys at the gym, um, and realized they were far less intimidating and far more supportive. But also they, would be open to like grabbing barbecue one day, talking to me about what I could and couldn't be doing. And since they were at the same gym as me and at roughly the same time, which is a crazy hour, I figured they probably live right around here, which was largely true. So really, for me, it was looking at my life and realizing there were social events that I could go to that I had been sort of avoiding, whether it was through work, whether it was through school, whether it was through religion, or whether it was through community and fitness stuff. And, there was a few websites I went to as well. Maybe it was like Meetup or something, I don't know, that had like all these events. Like I remember I went to one, there was like a local like hiking club or whatever. And I went there and I never went again, but it would put me out of my elements and I met some people and it was good. And for that day, while I went there, I didn't feel lonely. And when I got home, I thought, I'm not going to do that again, but I'm glad I had that experience. Right. And it was a lot better than just sitting at home for that day. And so there were a number of things I tried, and it's something I still definitely struggle with. But one of the big things was being okay feeling uncomfortable, because pretty much in all of those social settings, especially at 390, at 375, at 350 pounds, the first time I had gone, you can tell by my accent, I'm not a Southerner, right? I was well outside of my comfort zone, and that was one of the big things that I had to get over. Although getting over might not be the right term. I had to be okay with, because it's still out of my comfort zone, right? But it's something that now I've talked with my wife about doing the same thing. Like there's got to be young professional, young couples groups. Like we should go do that, right? Especially since COVID, there's just a ton of people who I don't think are going out as much as they used to, especially young men. And like, I don't think it's particularly healthy. And I also think that every medium-sized and small town or the surrounding ones probably has more events than you think so. It's just you've looked down on them in the past, or I'm not interested, or you made up some excuse to why you couldn't go, instead of just going once and seeing how it was. And, maybe you go back, right?
Appreciate it, Dave. Hey, we only got you for a couple more minutes, and I would like
Sure.
to ask you two more questions if you don't mind. So
Sure.
your wife, she has also done phenomenal in her journey as well. So could you share with us was it just by watching you being a good example, or how did you help her with her process, or did you, or was it just purely just being a good example?
It was mostly being a good example. She does not get up at 4 a.m. with me. She is not a social media person. She's not public about it, so I don't talk about it too much in details. But yes, she has gotten healthier, and alongside me, doing something very, not very, but at least somewhat different to me in terms of when she exercises, whether she, puts it online, which she absolutely does not and does not want to. And, she does not do, keto or carnivore. She doesn't even like red meat. So having said that, like she has, substantially cut out a lot of the same foods I have so that our meals can largely match up, right? She loves chicken and she loves eggs, and she's the one that's primarily cooking at home with the exception of all the red meat, right? So those breakfasts and lunch are almost all cooked by her, especially because I'm usually working during that time period. And then the red meat is primarily what's being cooked by me. So I would say that primarily it's my example, and then it is that there's a lot of overlap. So she ends up doing some of low carb with me because she likes some of those foods and she knows that's what I'm going to eat. And then she does go to the same gym I do, and usually on weekends, since the gym doesn't open until 7, we will go together. So we do a workout or two a week. If I'm not taking a rest day, or maybe I just do a cardio day together. That didn't used to happen because those were used to be my complete rest days, but she decided she wanted to go and she asked if I'd go with her. And so now I go on those days as well, though I try to take it light those days. And I would say that our diets generally overlap, maybe 60% of the time. But then there are, more natural carbs that she will eat, like a sweet potato, or, some of the things that are definitely have sugar, definitely have carbs, but nowhere near the level that you would find in fast food or junk food or things of that nature. She also had nowhere near, the level of weight to lose as me. So that has been good as well.
That's saying a lot because it seems to be hardest to inspire the people you live with. It's just what it is. So the fact that you were able to do that, that's fantastic. So we're going to let you answer one last question we ask all of our guests before we get on out of here, and that is, what is one tip, helpful hint, advice you have for people starting this journey or are currently on this journey?
I guess I would say that initially, I wish I had realized in the gym specifically, but also in that nutrition and healthy food space, how supportive people would be, especially some of the people who look like they've been going to the gym for longer than I've been alive, who are, deadlifting more than my starting weight, who look very intimidating. They turn out to be some of the nicest and most supportive people. Even if I don't ever want to look like them or probably do the things they're doing to look like that, they want to see me there. They want to make me feel like I belong there. They want me to come back the next day, and they're not really watching and critiquing me, right? They're focused on their own workouts. I know that was a big thing of mine initially, is that everyone's watching me walk slowly on the treadmill. Isn't that embarrassing? It's not embarrassing, right? They think it's great that I'm there and they want to see me there the next day, and they might want to push me, right? But it's almost always, or always really, from a positive place where they want to see progress and they want to help and they want to answer any questions I have. And that's largely been the same when I've reached out to people in terms of cooking and food and things, which has been more online than in person. But if I were starting over, I wish I could convince 400 plus pound Dave that those people really aren't judging me and really aren't watching me, and they 99% of them want me to succeed, and if I have questions, they'll be happy to answer them.
That's excellent, Dave. Excellent advice. Thank you so much. So where can people find you? What socials are you on? How do they find you? What's your ID on there, whatever you call that?
I'm DaveEDanna on Twitter, or X, or whatever we call it these days, and I'm DavidEDanna on Instagram and Threads, and I think I'm DavidEDanna on Facebook as well. I'm pretty much my name on all the platforms, including YouTube. I'm the guy in Planet Fitness at 4 a.m. posting selfies. So if you see me doing that, you're at the right account. But it's pretty much just my name, some version of my name on every platform.
Dave, thank you so much for being here with us and chatting with us tonight. You're a huge inspiration. You've done so much for the community and just to help people. And on behalf of Robyn and I, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have a good night.